Welcome to Business Talk, Sister Gawk. This is an episode that I wanted to put an intro on that's different because I wanted to share something that's happened this week. Now, on Monday morning, I actually scheduled a meeting with a podcaster who does podcast promotion to try to figure out what exactly maybe there was an opportunity for me to grow my podcast and whatever. And I started looking to see, maybe there's a company out there that can help me with that. And I'm just interested in poking around. In that meeting, he asked me some questions, and I ended up saying something along the lines of, well, you have to understand that when you have a podcast, people may not like you. And I went on to say a couple things, and I was like, what am I doing? Why am I saying this? I don't even understand what's going on. And he was asking me these questions, and after the conversation, I just sat there so uncomfortable about why I said that. And I realized that the conversation was recorded, and I was like, what if this ever goes out there? Like, it was so out of context. How do I describe and respond to what I was trying to say? And so I decided that in the next podcast release that I was going to do, I was going to make a response to that in like the full thought of what I was thinking about in the moment. And it was just this weird feeling that I needed to respond to that. So I recorded this entire episode. It took me probably like 2 or 3 hours to put it all together. And I scheduled it on Monday to go out this Friday as you're listening. And Wednesday, yesterday, a pretty well-known podcaster was shot. And all of a sudden I just realized, oh my goodness, like this is way bigger than me. And the information in here that I normally wouldn't share, and I'm going to be honest, on Tuesday I told one of my friends, I'm really nervous to put out this episode. So if you could just pray for me, that would be fantastic. And all of these things, like I've been sick. I usually don't podcast when my voice is shot and all of that. So it's just weirdly timed that all of this happened. And I'm not saying I know a whole lot in life, but this episode, I really want you to understand that I didn't know why I put it together until now. And so that's my intro to this, and I hope you will enjoy it. Welcome to Business Talk, Sister Gawk. I'm Becca. Today's episode topic is business advice I wish I had a mentor tell me. And this is actually part 3 in a series, so you can go back and listen to the other ones if you want to. My voice is completely shot, but I just decided, you know what? I'm going to do this anyways because this podcast I think is important. And I know that I want to release it this coming week, so I wanted to put it together for you regardless of how I'm feeling. So a couple things that I want to say. One is I don't know your circumstances and I don't know you personally. So if you're listening to this podcast, just understand that this is for educational purposes. I don't know your specific circumstances or the struggle that you're in. And I would just recommend reaching out to people who are wise counselors who can know you personally. And I don't. So just trying to make sure that you understand that. Okay. So the first thing, I had a mentor tell me, and I wish it would have been followed up with this information. When I decided to make a podcast, a mentor told me after like listening to my podcast and all the episodes that I had put out so far, he said, I hope you realize what you are doing will make you a target, but you won't know it. And people will have meetings about you behind closed doors because you are a threat to them. And I was like, what do you mean? I don't understand. Why would my podcast do that? Like, and he said, well, having a voice and an income outside of your local economy means people have less control of your livelihood. And that puts you in a position to be less biased when you ask questions. And an uncontrolled narrative is a threat to those who have control. And that made me really afraid. I was like, what? I'm not trying to do anything bad. And he said, no, if someone has something to hide, they will try to get rid of you if you are exposing it by the questions you are asking. They will treat you poorly, and they will create narratives about you that are not true. And you need to be careful what you say. And I was just mind blown by that because I was like, okay, I'll try to be respectful of people. I mean, I'm just trying to make positive things in the world, you know? But this is what I wish that mentor would have told me. I wish that mentor would have come back. And for me, I'm a Christian and I don't talk about this on my podcast a lot. So I'm just going to give you that caveat. If this is not your belief system, I totally understand. And you can stick around if you want to. But I'm just throwing that out there. I wish that mentor would have told me, do not fear. Just do good and care for people. If you love people well, it will come at a cost to you personally. But you won't have regrets about it, and you'll be able to sleep at night without fear. Yes, there are always going to be people that are afraid of being exposed for doing what's wrong. And they're going to try to do things to control you, which means that you can't show your whole hand about what your vision is for where you're going, because if you give it to them, they will try to block you at every place they can think possible to stop what you're doing. But don't fear them. What you should fear is your relationship being in a bad place with God, because God always has his plans come to pass. And if you are right with God, you will see just enough of the next steps he wants you to take to execute on where he is going. And if you are going with God, you cannot be stopped. And I don't mean that in like a, because what you want to get done is going to get done. No, it's what God wants to get done is going to get done. And if you are with him, you don't need to fear. You do not need to fear at all, because those roadblocks will move in God's time. And really what's important is your heart in caring for those people that may be fearful of you. And then the next thing I wish a mentor would have told me is stop complaining about it and pray. You can be the loudest, squeakiest wheel, but boldness without brokenness is bullying. It is. I have seen roadblocks in my life that have been just impossibly movable. But you know what? When I pray and trust that it's part of God's plan that he wants to get done and it's in his time and I don't have to worry about it, I don't have to take that responsibility on, God makes a way. And honestly, in my life, what I have seen is that if I knew the exact plan of where I was supposed to be going every step of the way, I would totally mess it up, because I would see how hard it was going to be and then I would not want to go. So I only know part of the plan. But like in that, if I can fear not being right with God, I will know what the next step is that I have to take, and I'll take it in a way that is respectful and restorative to relationships with other people. If I act out of my own fear, anger, or frustration, I will tear people down. And I'm going to come back to that brokenness piece of it, because I am a terrible person on so many levels. I think like really mean things about people sometimes. And I need to recognize that that's wrong, because it's not helping anything. It's not making people's relationships better. And what I have found too, I wish a mentor would have told me this. Listen, you will always do your best work when you feel safe. And I would have been like, okay, mentor, yeah, duh. And then if that mentor would have said, no, you don't understand. The people who are roadblocks may not be because they're bad people. They're just afraid. They are afraid of being blasted on social media or being called out in their jobs. And some of the most difficult people in your life that you will be frustrated with are afraid. And if you can focus on building those people up and finding the things that are good about what they are doing and encouraging them, they will not fear as much, because they will think, I have an advocate who's going to come and have my back when somebody questions me about what I'm doing. And I think that is a huge thing it doesn't cost anything to encourage people to magnify what is good about their intentions and about the things that they have done, even if it's not the project that you wanted them to work on. If they're doing anything good, finding those things and saying, wow, I'm so thankful that you did that. That's amazing. And not just in person, but also online. I'm going to be honest with you. I even feared like magnifying those people online. I did. Because I thought, what if somebody comes after me for being excited about what they're doing? And I was just like, you know what? If that is the only thing that I have to fear, like I should take that hit. I should take the hit of like, if they do say, like, you're this person, I don't like them. It's like, I can just respond and say, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I do think that person is doing great things for our community in these specific areas that I've seen value in. I can't speak to the rest of what you're saying. I wasn't there. I didn't know how that made you feel, but like, this is what I've seen, and I'm glad about these things. And I wish a mentor would have told me, if somebody is going to rip you down for being positive and being excited about something good, that's their problem. Don't fear that. That's so silly. That is the silliest thing. And quite honestly, if anyone does do those things to you digitally, there are going to be a load of people in the community that may not say anything online because they are too afraid. But they'll see you in the community and they'll say, I saw what you did and I support you. I'm so glad you did that. I'm excited about it too. Because you know what? In a culture right now of social media, people fear being portrayed a certain way. And that's so unhealthy. And so that's the next thing that I would tell myself. Like if I was a mentor, I would have said, Becca, most of the things that people have to say that are crucial for your business, for your impact, and for your understanding of a situation that you're facing, it's not going to be out there on the internet because they legally cannot have it out there on the internet. Gated content with a cost to it is for legal reasons. They have real information of what they can share, but they can't share it unless you are their client or their student or they're giving you specific advice for your business and your situation. Because legally, they are not allowed to do it publicly. And I never really realized that. And also, I never really realized that most of the things that I learn are off the record. Because people not only fear, they're just legally not allowed to tell you this. And some of it is rightly so, because there are a lot of industries that are highly regulated because they don't want people to be taken advantage of. And they've seen how misleading marketing or whatever, especially in like the legal, financial, and insurance and healthcare industries, they're not allowed to say things a certain way. And so because they're trying to protect the public, they've gone through a series of protections with like, you're allowed to say this, but not this. And this person has to be your client if you're going to offer them financial advice and whatever, all this stuff, you know? And it's the same with the real estate industry. I mean, so basically all of the major decisions in your life are gated by industry regulation. And it's not because the people who like made those rules were trying to make it so that honest people who truly care couldn't tell you. It's actually because nefarious people who were terrible misled you. So people in the legislature said, hey, we're going to make rules on this. And people within the financial industry said, we're going to try to solve this problem. But in the process of trying to solve the problem, they limited the amount of trustworthy people that are allowed to actually speak freely on the internet. And so it is actually really hard to find good quality advice on things because the only people that'll be able to tell you don't have degrees. They don't have certifications. They are just on YouTube trying to explain things or whatever. And they're doing it through like course creation, all this stuff. They don't have certifications. And you know what? A lot of people actually don't want to go get those certifications because the moment that they do, their future content creation would need to be very strategic to ensure that it didn't violate certain rules. So that kind of puts it in this weird place where you have a lot of people without degrees and all this stuff saying, oh, you should do this on the internet. But is it a really good idea? You're not really sure. So I wish a mentor would have told me, go talk to those actual professionals who have the certifications on your own, because it doesn't matter how many times you look at the internet, because those people don't know your specific situation and there may be something that you haven't looked at differently. And that's why I say that in my podcast now too, because I want to make sure that you have real people in your real life and you're not just looking at the internet for everything, because that's just not healthy either, quite honestly. Okay. The next thing I wish a mentor would have told me, going back to my first example of like what a mentor said to me and everything, I wish a mentor would have also said, hey, Becca, fear will make you become a conspiracy theorist. Knock it off and realize that if you aren't praying for those people, nothing is ever going to get better, because their perspective is never going to change unless your perspective changes. Do not see people as your enemy. Pray for those people. And as you're praying for them, God will show you how to love them. And I'm saying this because I have feared bullies before, because I've watched them bully other people. But when I have like taken the time to pray for those people and get to know them and hear their heart, I realized that the hurts that were done to them impact the way they treat other people and why they are the way they are. And as I've been able to just build those relationships, I realize that those people aren't trying to go out and be a bully. It's just that everyone fears them as a bully because of the way that they're presenting themselves. And it's really not because they're trying to be. It's because they've had things in their life that make them respond in a certain way that make them appear that way. And that may not be their real intention. But you're never really going to know what their real intention was until you have communication and say, hey, like, I saw you did this and I'm just wondering what you were trying to do with that. What was the thing you were trying to get across? And the more you really actually sit down with people and understand what they're complaining about or blasting people out on the internet about or whatever, the more you actually like get to know those people and hear their heart, you're like, oh, I get where you're coming from now. And like, I don't think that what you put together originally is actually the real problem. Like, maybe it's this. Is that right? And you can ask them these questions in a way that you can come to like, hey, let's actually like look at solving what you're upset about, but let's try to look at it in a way that is more targeted to the ask, because most people don't know what they're asking. And I am the same way. I am frustrated about something or whatever, but like I can't take my frustration in the moment and articulate it into what the actual ask is that I would like resolved. And so a lot of people get like, here's this, but like getting somebody else to just sit with you and then like pull it into like, so what actually can we do about this? And what actually is the real core issue? And when you can get to that with people and help them to articulate their ask in a way that makes sense and the reasoning for why they're asking the things they are, that actually does so much more to empower them to actually see real change. When I've had people who are genuinely interested in me take the time to like repeat back to me what I'm frustrated about or whatever and say, okay, like I hear this. What about this? And like really what I think you're actually trying to get after is this, right? And I'm like, aha, yeah, you are right. That's what I was trying to do. But the way that I went about it was completely inappropriate. And that's when I think the next thing I wish I would have had a mentor tell me, and I will probably preach this to myself regularly, is, Becca, if you did not prepare an agenda for this meeting, you should be rescheduling because you didn't think through what you wanted to talk about. Because for some of us that are verbal processors, We need that. We need somebody to just tell us straight up, like, you're going to ramble on for like 30 minutes. It's going to be a waste of everyone's time. Know exactly what you're trying to ask and know exactly how you are going to present it in a way that makes sense to other people. And quite honestly, that's probably something I need to work more on all the time. It's just, dude, don't say anything until you really thought through it. Okay, so the next thing is that I wish, especially at the beginning of my podcast, I wish I would have had a mentor say, real change takes courage and incredible endurance. It's a marathon. You would be amazed at how many people that I talk to that fear about speaking out about something is what holds them back from making change. Because I hear things when people talk to me off the record about things all the time. And that's why I was saying, like, you will learn more things off the record. And people will say, yeah, like, I totally had this experience, or this is what's broken. And I'm like, well, we should talk about that. Why don't we like do a podcast on it? Or like, why don't you like talk to the city council about it or whatever? And they say things like, no, because I have to work with these people every day. And they could make my life really hard. Like, they could be really angry with me, and then they could do things to me that I would be afraid of. And like, there's a lot of people who have that fear that their life is going to be harder. And I think that there is a true value in being an outsider who can advocate, because insiders can be punished a lot of the time. And it's important to listen to people well, because, and I think that, like, if a mentor would have told me, really focus on your identity as a person in Jesus. Because if that's not your foundation, you will act out of fear and you will cower to standing up for what's right when it's most important to fight for people. And every person has a voice, and what you choose to do with it can speak life or death to people. And if you want to see real change, you got to stop stomping around like a complainer, throwing shade at people or whatever. People will hold you at arm's length because your passion is misdirected and it's destructive. It's not constructive. And they will be fearful of your destruction path. So stop seeing institutions as the problem and being angry, but simply be calm and express your concerns and ask who they think would be the best person to talk to about that, and keep trying. The more you educate and the more you bring out like the story of, hey, these are the problems that I'm seeing, and even if it just gets in one person's ear more than it is now, and it's a tiny resolution or whatever, or maybe they can advocate at the next thing they go to, that's how real change happens. You don't chop a tree down with one stroke. It's lots of tiny strokes getting there to moving something. And large organizations take time to move. They are not nimble like you are. And you have to be patient and committed to doing something about change. Okay, so here's 2 more things I wish I would have had a mentor tell me. So one is, be very cognizant and careful of surrounding yourself with people who only care about making money, because that leads to greed. And you will train your brain to be blind to compassion and the needs of people. There is statistical evidence of how money and affluence leads to people being out of touch with the real needs and issues going on in the world. And this is the reason why our programs are so broken. Because on an organizational level, people write things into being to solve a problem that they have no personal experience with and they have not lived. People from all classes of life should be in your circle. Until we, honestly, like for me personally, if I were to go back and tell this to myself, until I became a foster parent, like I had no idea what the lives of some people in poverty look like. I didn't understand the system and why it was broken and why so many people get stuck there and why They feel like they're up against a losing battle every single day. It just, I would have had no idea. And you know what? I'm not just talking about like going and doing community service. Like, we had people living in our home that are like coming out of this stuff. And you're like, well, why did that happen? And this and whatever. And you start looking at like the magnitude of like all of these things. You're never going to know that unless you really do life with people. And I wish I would have had a mentor tell me, as you see these struggles, I want you to write them down. And then I want you to condense them. And I want you to make a one-pager of like, here are all the things we can change. And be ready at any given moment to give it to people who you think would be able to do something about it. And I wish I would have known that sooner, because I think I wasted a lot of time. And like now I have like a bulleted list of like, here are 13 things we could change. And like when people can get it in that format, like you can put it in front of like people on other podcasts, news article outlets, or whatever, all this stuff. Like you have the resources ready so that when the time is right, you can say, here you go. And then I wish also a mentor would have told me, just keep doing that and don't expect anything to come of it. Do not expect a change to happen. Don't think that like the moment you said yes, like this is a problem, that all of a sudden like somebody's going to take up your cause and go for it. That's not how it works. You have to just keep bringing it up and bringing it up and bringing it up. And eventually a bunch of people from all spaces are going to know. And then they may not be able to change the whole thing because it's a huge problem. But maybe they can speak into the one thing in the right meeting and something might be able to change on this one level. So for the gawk portion of this episode, I'm going to tell you a story. And I kind of wanted to speak to this because I was talking about like institutions that fear you or whatever by having a podcast and all this stuff. And I think like anybody who feels like they're being called out starts to like want to be upset with you. And I'm just going to give you an example. Like here, I applied for a grant. And the whole process, it was like a new program, I think, or they just didn't really have a lot of detail about what it looked like or anything. And so I just kept asking questions like, hey, how do I make sure that this applies or whatever? And I felt like I was constantly like getting stuck with like, I don't actually know the answer to these things. And I keep asking, and it feels like every time it's like a little piece of information, but not the whole thing. And I just had mentioned it to somebody in a meeting of just like, oh yeah, like I got this grant, but it's like really not that great because of these problems or whatever. And that person was like, well, you should really talk to the director of that organization. And I was like, no, like I don't really want to do that. And this friend of mine said, no, I really would encourage you. I will like connect you with that person. And this guy like literally sent a personal email introducing me to the director of that organization. And I'm like, I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble here. Like, I just thought like the program could be better. And anyways, I ended up having a meeting with the director and I kept saying that like, hey, I just like noticed these things and it would really be great if these things were improved. And I really worked hard to think about what specifically would be better so that I didn't ramble on because I'm terrible at that. So I just said like, these are things that I think would improve the program. And the director was like, well, I'm going to talk to my director of this program, but would you be willing to meet with the director to give your feedback directly and let them know what you think would improve the program? And I was like, I mean, yeah, I would, but I don't want to get anybody in trouble. And I ended up meeting later on with this person, and I could tell that like there was a lot of fear there because it just seemed like I was the person making their life miserable. And I was like, no, I'm just trying to make the program better or whatever. But I just could tell this person, I'm like, great, I'm gonna have to work with this person in the future. They're probably gonna like be angry with me for even bringing this up. And now I'm gonna have all these problems. And I was just like praying about it. And I'm just like, God, I don't know what to do because I have this next meeting coming up to get my final approval on this project. And the people that are in charge of this program are coming, but they're probably like not the happiest with me because I just gave honest feedback about how it could be better and they fear being called out. And And I don't necessarily know that to be true, but like it just seemed that way by the way that they were acting and whatever. And I was just like, I can see that this person is going to come and just nitpick my whole project and make it really hard for me to get my final approval expectations met, because it just seems like this is the way this is going to happen. And I was just thinking, man, this person's going to make my life really hard. And I mean, maybe not, but I was just like preparing for it, and I was just praying about it, and I was just like, God, I don't know what to do to solve this problem, but I felt like I needed to say something. And now I'm in a position where potentially I'm going to be punished. And as I was praying that, I kid you not, the main director of the program walks by me, literally right in front of me. And I'm like, hey, how's it going? And we start talking. And I said, like, yeah, would you like to see the progress of my project? And this person said, yeah, I love it. And so I actually got to sit down with the boss and show the boss my project. And the boss was like, this looks great. I'm so glad that it went well. And I'm so excited for them to come meet with you to finish out your project. And the next week or whatever, here the person comes that like I thought was going to be so mad at me, and was just like, oh yeah, my boss came by and saw your project. It looks great. We just got to finish these couple things and we'll be good to go. And I just was like, oh my word, that was an answer to my prayer. And the things that I was fearing about people coming after me to be backlash, because I said like, hey, let's make this better, to like stand up for other people that were struggling with the same things, God just got it out of the way and gave no leg to stand on for that potentially to be an issue. And I've just been like amazed over and over again. And I don't talk about a lot of this on my podcast because I try to make it business focused, but wow, in my business, I have just seen God come through so many times in these ways. And it's just been like such an encouragement to me to not fear doing good and not fear using my voice, even when sometimes it seems really, really scary. So if you enjoyed this podcast, I mean, you can give it a review if you want, but I just hope it was a blessing to you. And I hope that you have a great day.